Salute, my Quick Classics friends. Uh, Welcome to another edition of Quick Classics on this eve of St. Crispin's Day. And while I will not recite the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, we will be delving into the classics today, the Greco-Roman classics, that is. Again, if you like the content, click a like, subscribe, and share. I do thank you for that. Before we get started today, I wanted to wish happy birthday to my friend Aaron Holmes, fellow member of the Mulberry Canyon Philosophical Society. Happy birthday and many more. Okay, let's get going today. Um, we're upon Halloween season, and sometimes with the when looking at the roots of rather the history, cultural history of the holiday, the easy direction to take is the Celtic or the Germanic route, and that's certainly there. Um, but the question arises: are there any classical connections between Halloween and the Greco-Roman world? And the answer to that is yes. Uh, the Romans actually celebrated a festival in honor to the goddess Pomona. Pomona was the goddess of orchards and fruit and general verdancy. And her name actually comes from a Latin word which means fruit, palmum. And her festival was August 13th proper. Um, Generally, we know most about Pomona from um, the literature that the Romans left behind us, most notably Ovid, and more specifically the Metamorphoses, um, where we actually get the retelling of the mythology behind Pomona. And um, what we learn about Pomona is that she's a nymph, a sort of woodland demigoddess who is forever scorning the amorous advances of the satyrs and other woodland demigods until she meets a particular one named Vertumnus, which she finally weds. Um, but I say all this just to give you a kind of synopsis of the mythology behind Pomona and her various rites and festivals. She did have um, a I suppose you could call it a religious college devoted to her. There were these um, groups of priests known as colleges in the ancient Roman world, and the high priest of the Pomona rites was known as the Flamen uh, Pomonalis, I believe is what it was. Um, yeah, that's right, Flamen Pomonalis. Uh, what's interesting about the timing and the celebratory aspects of the holiday um, during the harvest and prominent, particularly late season and winter fruits and foods like apples and nuts. Things that you could bring in and keep during the entire cold part of the year. Um, is that a lot of that imagery is retained, or at least shared with later iterations of Halloween. Be that as it may, there's an interesting kind of footnote here that will dovetail into the Halloween season proper, and that's that Pomona actually had a sacred orchard in Ostia in Roman Italy, and the date of the observance of the rites, the most important rites at this orchard, was actually November the 1st, which coincides, of course, with the Celtic and Germanic New Year festivals. Um, so there's definitely some connective tissue there, particularly when you consider when the Romans began to move out into Central and Northern and Western Europe, and they encounter the Germans and the Celtic tribes. And despite the fact that this, of course, is done under the banner of conquest, there is a lot of cultural and religious syncretism that takes place. And so the rites of Pomona were taken into these lands, and over time they would syncretize with the Celtic festival Samhain on October 31st, November the 1st, which was the Celtic New Year, and believed to be a time when the veil between the spirit world and the physical realm was thinnest, and you could communicate through that thin veil. But in any discussion about the history of Halloween, Pomona has to be a part of that because of the particularly Western nature of Halloween. And the ties back to, of course, Western tradition, the ties back to the Greek and the Roman world. As another footnote to this, a lot of times you'll see that Roman deities have Greek analogs. That's not always the case, and it's the case certainly with Pomona. And you have to remember that Roman religion, Roman mythology is not an exact analog for Greek religion and Greek mythology anyway. Uh, there were many, many Roman gods, collectively known as the Noumena, and a very diffuse pantheon compared to the Greek pantheon. But the closest analog is probably Demeter in Greek mythology, the goddess of grain. But again, it's not a not an exact fit. Although in some cases you'll see Pomona conflated with Demeter. But it's interesting to look at a festival like Pomona in the history of Halloween, because it's I wouldn't say that it's a speed bump or that it's sort of overlooked, but it's sometimes kind of glossed over, with just a sentence or two. But in any of the lectures that I've done over the years on the history of Halloween for museums and things like that, I always make sure that it's a part of the narrative because of the Western roots, the Western ensconcement of Halloween. And that will do it for this episode of Quick Classics. I hope that this has been informative and that you will tune in again. Again, click like, subscribe, and share if you like the content, and I will see you soon.